This is the big story of the day, folks. A stunning terror verdict that is testing President Obama's strategy on civilian trials for terrorists. Ahmed Ghailani, the first Guantanamo Bay detainee to be tried in a civilian courtroom, nearly walked away scot-free yesterday after a jury found him not guilty on all but one of more than 280 charges. He was not guilty for the murders of more than 200 people killed in 2 U.S. embassy bombings in Africa, despite quite a bit of evidence that he was deeply involved, including his cell phone that was used as a detonator, some other testimony that said that he was involved in getting the truck for this bombing. There were 12 Americans who were killed on that day. Now, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder repeatedly promised that civilian courts could handle this case.
At the conclusion of the Ghailani case, I'll ask you to ask me that question again. And I will give you the same answer, which is that Article III courts are fully capable of handling these matters.
I wonder what Eric Holder's reaction to this news was when it came late yesterday. I am happy to be joined today by New York Republican Pete King, who was outraged by this verdict. He is the ranking member of the House Homeland Security Committee. He will be chairing that committee starting in January. Congressman King, welcome. Good to have you today.
Good morning, Martha. Good to be with you.
You have said that this is a tragic outcome.
It is. It's tragic because of the outcome itself, but also tragic because we knew for at least the last month that this was bound to happen. Once the judge excluded the testimony of a witness who would have connected Ghailani to these horrible acts, which would have brought about conviction, it became very, very difficult to convict him. And this is the real danger, the real insanity, if you will, of bringing these cases in a civilian court. If this had been in a military commission, that evidence would have been allowed, and I'm confident that Ghailani would have been convicted. And the president said, and the attorney general, the reason they wanted to have these cases in a civilian court was to show that these courts could get the job done and let the world see what was going to happen. Well, what the world has seen is that Ghailani was acquitted on 284 counts, including over 200 charges of murder.
Well, you know, I heard from David Lee Miller, who's been covering this case for us, that the prosecution basically got up from the table, walked out, and were completely silent. They had to have been struck by this. It was also reported that Ghailani smiled at times when the not guilty verdict was read over and over and over and over again for all of those more than 200 murders in these embassy bombings. So, you know, nobody can feel too good about that this morning. But the other side, Congressman King, is probably going to say things along these lines, that he got 20 years, that he could get life, 20 years to life sentence, and that because of the way that this case was handled, there are fewer opportunities for him to appeal because, you know, they were so stringent about not allowing that testimony.
Well, there was never a problem with keeping him in jail. We could have detained him indefinitely if we had wanted to, because there's a war with al-Qaeda, and he is an enemy combatant in that war. The purpose of this trial, as I understood it from the president, was to show the world that we would convict these people and find them guilty of their heinous crimes. Instead, the world has seen an American jury acquit him of over 200 counts of murder, 284 counts altogether. And it really sets the tone as to what can happen. It's really, you know, the prelude to what would happen if we ever had Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and the other 9/11 defendants on trial in a civilian court in New York.
What do you think is going to happen with that? Where is KSM going to be tried, and when?
I doubt if he's going to be tried in the next several years. I think the president has boxed himself into a corner, he and Eric Holder, and I think that you will find Khalid Sheikh Mohammed kept in Guantanamo along with the other 9/11 defendants, and he'll be held indefinitely, and sometime after 2012, depending on what happens in that election, then the president will decide. Right now, he cannot bring them to New York. Yesterday's verdict shows why they can't bring them or shouldn't bring them to a civilian court. If he has a trial in Guantanamo, it looked like too much of a reversal for the president. I think they're just going to put everything on ice and let him sit there for the next several years.
You know, a lot of questions are raised about Eric Holder, the Attorney General, as a result of all of this. I want to play a couple pieces of sound of what he has said about the importance he felt of trying these people in New York. Listen to both of these sound bites, and I want to get your reaction, Congressman King.
Sure.
After 8 years of delay, those allegedly responsible for the attacks of September the 11th will finally face justice. They will be brought to New York, to answer for their alleged crimes in a courthouse just blocks away from where the Twin Towers once stood. Failure is not an option. These are cases that have to be won. I don't expect that we will have a contrary result.
Yeah, it's very tough when you walk into a court of law to guarantee people that there's going to be justice. You think of all the families who lost people in those embassy bombings. This was their one chance to see somebody pay that price.
It really was. And even though it was a failure, I don't blame the prosecutors in the case. They did the very best they could under the circumstances. But under the rules of the law in that case, it was almost impossible to win it. And, when Eric Holder says there was a delay for 8 years, the fact is, several years ago, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed wanted to plead guilty before a commission. It would have been over and he would have received the death penalty. So much of the delay came from constant legal delays by liberal lawyers, then by the president and Eric Holder themselves closing down the military commissions in Guantanamo. And now we've had a delay for over a year without a word has come from the Attorney General. So the delay is because of him.
Congressman King, thank you very much. It's always good to have you here. You're going to be in the catbird seat for all of this as the chairman of your committee come January. So we'll be talking to you a lot more.
Thank you, Mother.
Have a good day, sir. Thank you.
What a story that was when the verdict came out.